Hi, this is Alex from PHP Academy and welcome to this video on creating a language chooser in PHP. Now in this video we're going to look at implementing two different languages, creating two different language files which are going to be used based on a user's choice, and then obviously we're going to fall back to a default choice, so the default language might be English. So we'll go ahead first of all and look at which files we're going to be using and how files are going to interact with each other. It's actually extremely easy to do this, so there's not really much involved here. Okay, so first of all let's go ahead and create a new file. So I'm just going to create some PHP tags. I'm going to save it within a folder here. It's just language, which I'll be accessing in my browser in a moment, and I'm going to save an index page just here, so index.php. So if we head over to our browser, you can see that there's obviously nothing on the page at the moment. Now what we're going to be doing in here is we're going to be including a file that we'll need to include on every page of our website, which is quite standard when you're working with a site that perhaps uses a database connection, something like that. So we're going to be including a file that determines the user's language based on the fact they may have clicked on a link. They might have, either clicked on a link or roll back to the default. And then we're going to include a language file that we can then use on any pages. So the first thing I'm going to go ahead and do is just require in a file. Now I'm going to create a folder called core, and I'm going to save a file called init.php that's just going to store this logic. Now obviously you can create the logic that you're going to see in a moment on any page at all and include that on any page. It really doesn't matter. Let's go ahead and create this init.php file. So nothing in it just at the moment, but let's go ahead and create a new folder called core, and I'm going to go ahead and save this init.php file in there. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we are going to be working with sessions. Now sessions in PHP is data that's stored client side for that particular session, and then when the user closes their browser, it ends. You can of course use cookies here, but I'm not going to go into that. It's easy to implement cookies as well. Sessions are just quicker to do and easier to get the point across. So I'm going to use sessions for now, but you're more than welcome to go ahead and use cookies. Even store these values in a database if you're that if you can store things in a database against a user. So the first thing we need to do is call the session start function, which gives us access to using sessions. And that's all we're going to do for now. We're now going to go ahead and create our two language files, and I'm going to create an English one and a German one. So let's go ahead and do that. So lots of files to create here, and obviously for each language you create, you're going to have to create a new file and then specify the translation for that. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new folder, and I'm going to call it lang, and I'm going to store all my language files in here. So the first one's going to be english.php, and then I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to call this deutsch.php, so German. Okay, so now what do we need to do in these two files? Well, we're going to be creating two identical arrays that store an English sort of key and then the German or English translation, or French, or whatever language that you're including. So we're going to go ahead and create a variable called lang, and this is going to be an array. I'm going to pull this down slightly just so it's easier to view, but in array we can have a key, and then we can assign a value to this key. Now this would be an associative array. If we were to just have this, say hello, this would now be key 0 because it's arrays are 0 indexed. But if we say this with an equal sign and a greater than sign, hello, and the value of that is hello, this is the key that we're picking up on, and we're saying, well, the translation in English for hello is hello. And then in the German file we're going to do exactly the same thing. Just paste that in there, but we're going to change that so it'll be hallo instead. So this is obviously not everything we're going to include, but as I said, I'm going to bring it down like this just to make it a little bit easier to read. And obviously we comma separate values. So I can go ahead and paste something in here, and I can say, well, I want to use the word coffee at some point, and that is cafe, like that. I'll get rid of that last comma. It can remain there, but it's good practice to leave it out. So I'm just going to include two different translations. That's all I'm going to be doing. In actual fact, I need to change this one to coffee, because that's the English version of the file. Let me just go ahead and copy and paste this and replace this here, and then I'll change these accordingly. There we go. So we now have a variable called lang, which is equal in both files, which is extremely important because we're going to include these files independent, and then this will be our sort of access to these words. So yeah, that's it really. So inside of init, we need to go ahead and do something. Well, what I'm going to do is, the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and include lang / English.php. Now I'm just going to show an example of how we're going to use this, then we'll create the logic to determine the user's choice. So inside the index now, because I've included this file, I can go ahead and echo lang, and then in square brackets, in single quotes in the middle, you can go ahead and choose which word that you want to pick. So because I've included English in, hello or coffee will produce hello or coffee like this with a capital H. So let's just go ahead and say hello for now, and we'll append an exclamation mark on the end. So now when I refresh, you see we get hello. However, if I go to init.php and I decide to include the German translation file and click refresh, this changes to hallo. So this is essentially what we're doing. Now we just need the logic to determine what the user has chosen as their language. So hopefully that makes sense. Now we're going to go ahead and do this logic. So the first thing we need to do is, because we're including files based on what users have specified to us, we need to include an array of allowed languages, because we don't want users to specify things willy-nilly if they're not allowed. So I'm going to create an array called allowed lang. This is going to be similar to the arrays we created before, but they're just going to have two values. So this will be the 0th key and the first key. And here I'm just going to say English and German. So these have to relate to the file names. That's really, really important. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to check if a specific variable has been passed, or query string has been passed here. And the way this is going to look is lang equals and then whatever language that your user wants to choose. They're obviously not going to have to specify it in the URL bar at the top, but you're going to have some links on your site to go through to sort of index.php !lang equals English. So these are get variables where this is the value here, lang, and then this is the sort of key name, and this is the value. So when I specify this, I want to check if this exists and then set the language to this here. So let's go ahead and check for that now. So create an if statement here. I'm going to say is set, so I'm checking if something's set, i.e. has this get variable been passed through as a query string in the URL. So that's called lang. Now if that's equal to true, and we need to now check that this value is in this array, because we don't want them to say French or something if it doesn't exist. So in array. Now in array function takes the value and the array, and that just checks if the value passed is within an array. So $_get lang, and then a comma for the second parameter, which is the array, and that's allowed lang. Now if that's equal to true, what does this mean? Well, if a user specified it by clicking a link and it's gone through as a get variable, then we need to set our session to store this language. So $_session lang is equal to $_get lang. So now let me go ahead and echo $_session lang, and let's see what we get out on our page now. So I'm going to go ahead and just remove this and press enter. Now we have undefined variable lang. Now what's the problem here? Well, let's go ahead and have a look. We're not actually including any files on here based on the user's language. So here we're accessing this lang variable, which is inside of here, and that's an array, but we're not including it in here. So what do we need to do here? Well, instead of echoing it out, we can see that it's worked. If I just go back over to the browser, we can see it's worked now. And the same if we were to say lang equals German, we get this out. So we're storing a session now, and even if I get rid of this, you can see it stays. So now whichever pages we're on, this value has stayed. But we need to go ahead and include this .php, English.php, Deutsch.php. So we go ahead and we include lang / and it's x.php. So x is either English or German in this case, so we go ahead and concatenate, and that's $_session lang. Perfect. So now this is going to include lang / English.php, depending on this get variable which has been placed into a session, or Deutsch for German. So enter. Hallo, we've obviously got German at the moment. If I then go ahead and specify English, it says hello. I can go ahead and get rid of this and the translation has remained, so we're storing it for that user's session. Now let's quickly look at another page because we're running on from this tutorial, and then we'll look at a default language as well, because at the moment we don't have a default language set. So let's go ahead and create another page. And I'll go ahead and store this in my root directory, and I'll call this another page.php. I'll go ahead and require in core / init.php, and I'm going to go ahead and echo lang coffee. So let's go ahead and access this page now. Now obviously we're going to get coffee as in the English spelling, but we can now actually still change the language from this page. So language equals German. We can go ahead and get rid of this, and we can browse back to our index page, and we still get a German translation. So we're keeping this, we're giving it flexibility. We can go to different pages, and whatever user the page is on, we can specify a language. So in the next part of this video, we are going to create some links to actually allow the user to select the language, and we're going to go ahead and set a default language.